Let me ask you something straight up. When was the last time a motorcycle genuinely surprised you? Not just a new paint scheme or a slightly bigger engine. I mean a real, honest-to-goodness, wait, they did what moment? Because I just found something that made me stop scrolling, sit up in my chair, and say out loud, are they actually doing that? According to reports coming out of Hangzhou, China, Benda has officially unveiled their third V4-powered cruiser in just 5 years, and this one, the Dark Flag 600, might be the most intriguing middleweight motorcycle nobody in America is talking about yet. But here's the thing that got me. While every other cruiser manufacturer is playing it safe with V-twins, Benda is going all in on an engine configuration that even Harley-Davidson walked away from decades ago. That alone should make you curious. But wait, because the real story isn't just about cylinders, it's about what Benda is doing that actually makes sense. Let me back up for a second. Benda first showed up on the global radar back in 2021 with a small 496cc V4 engine. At the time, honestly, a lot of people wrote it off as a novelty. You know how it goes. Another Chinese company showing off something weird at a trade show, probably never making it to production. Except they did. That engine ended up in the Dark Flag 500 in 2024, and then last year, Benda launched the Dark Flag 950 with a 948cc V4 making a claimed 107 horsepower. So this isn't some one-off experiment. This is a pattern, and the new Dark Flag 600 sits right in the middle of that lineup, with a 598cc V4 producing about 70 horsepower according to type approval documents. Now, 70 horsepower might not sound earth-shattering on paper, but here's what those numbers don't tell you. The engine is completely redesigned from the earlier 500, new cases, new cylinders, new heads. This isn't just a bored-out version of the old motor. Benda went back to the drawing board, and that tells me they're serious about making V4 their signature. But here's where things get genuinely interesting, and I mean the kind of interesting that makes you wonder why other companies aren't doing this. The Dark Flag 600 comes with an optional auto-clutch system. Now, before you roll your eyes and think automatic motorcycles are for beginners, hear me out. This system is almost identical in operation to Honda's e-clutch. And for those of you who don't know what that means, let me explain. There's an external electromechanical actuator and an electronic control unit that operates a completely conventional clutch. You still have a normal clutch lever on the left handlebar. You can override the system whenever you want. But here's the kicker. You don't have to use the clutch lever to shift gears, start, or stop. The bike does it for you. But you still have full manual control whenever you feel like using it. That's not an automatic transmission. That's a regular manual transmission with a robot that works the clutch for you when you're feeling lazy. And honestly, that's genius. Think about it for a second. How many times have you been stuck in stop-and-go traffic, your left hand cramping up from working the clutch every 2 seconds? How many new riders have been scared away from motorcycles entirely because the idea of coordinating clutch and throttle felt overwhelming? This system solves both problems without taking away the fun of shifting gears. You want to bang through the gears yourself? Go ahead, the lever's right there. You want to just twist the throttle and let the bike handle the clutch work? It does that too. According to sources, Benda debuted this same technology last year on their twin-cylinder Rock 707, and now they're bringing it to the V4 platform. So here's the question that's been bouncing around my head. If a Chinese company can figure this out and put it into production, why aren't more mainstream manufacturers doing the same thing? But we're not done with the clever features yet, because Benda also threw air suspension in the higher-spec version of the Dark Flag 600. And not the complicated, expensive race bike-style air suspension you might be thinking of. This is the kind that lets you adjust ride height on the fly. Push a button, the bike goes up or down. That's it. It's not revolutionary technology by any means, but on a middleweight cruiser in this price range, it's definitely not common. Benda has been using air suspension on several of their models already, including the radical inline-4 cruiser LFC 700, so they're clearly committed to making it part of their brand identity. And here's my take on that. When you're a smaller manufacturer trying to compete with established giants, you need something that makes people notice you. Unique features, things that bigger companies aren't offering at the same price point, and that's exactly what Benda is doing. Now, let me address the elephant in the room. It's a Chinese motorcycle. I know some of you just rolled your eyes. I know some of you are already typing comments about quality control, reliability, and parts availability. And look, those are fair concerns. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that every Chinese motorcycle that's ever been built has been perfect. That would be unhonest. But here's what I will say. The landscape is changing faster than most people realize. Companies like Benda and QJ Motor aren't just copying existing designs anymore. They're developing their own engines, their own platforms, their own technology, and they're bringing those bikes to markets like the United States, Europe, and Australia with global emissions compliance already sorted. Benda already has a presence in the US market, so the Dark Flag 600 could absolutely become a US model if the company decides it's worth the investment. And according to the reports, the bike has a claimed curb weight of 529 pounds. That's about 48 pounds heavier than the ROX 707 V-twin, but only 4 pounds lighter than the bigger Dark Flag 950. So it's not a lightweight by any means, but for a V4 cruiser with air suspension and an auto clutch, that's actually pretty reasonable. Let me take you on a quick history detour because this part honestly blew my mind. V4 cruisers aren't new. Honda had the Magna series. Yamaha had the VMAX in all of its glorious insanity. More recently, Ducati launched the Diavel V4 and X-Diavel V4. So Benda isn't inventing anything here. But here's the part that will mess with your head. The V4 could have easily become Harley-Davidson's flagship engine instead of the V-twin. I'm serious. Back in the early 1980s, Harley had a project called Nova. It was a modular 60-degree V4 engine developed in partnership with Porsche. Yes, that Porsche. The engine was ready. The prototypes existed. It nearly reached production. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Harley only had enough money to develop one major project. They could either move forward with the Nova V4, or they could invest in their existing V-twin range. They chose the V-twin. And honestly, from a business perspective at the time, that was probably the smart move. The V-twin was already established. It already had a loyal customer base. It was the safer bet. But think about what might have happened if they'd gone the other way. The entire cruiser market might look completely different today. V-twins might not be the default cruiser engine. V4s might be everywhere. And Harley's entire identity might have been built around a completely different sound, a completely different power delivery, a completely different riding experience. But that's not what happened, and that's why what Benda is doing right now is so fascinating to watch. They're basically picking up an idea that one of the biggest names in motorcycling almost committed to, and they're running with it. Not as a novelty, not as a one-off special edition, as the centerpiece of their entire cruiser lineup. 3 V4 models in 5 years. That's commitment. And according to the technical documents, Benda has even teased an 1198cc V4 making a claimed 152 horsepower that hasn't been released yet. So the Dark Flag 600 isn't the end of the road, it's just the latest step. Let me talk about some of the other details that caught my eye on this bike. Dual TFT displays. The main circular display sits in the normal position above the handlebar, but then there's a smaller secondary display actually recessed into the top of the fuel tank. Is that necessary? Probably not. Is it cool? Absolutely. It's the kind of design flourish that makes a bike feel more premium than its price tag might suggest, and that's exactly what Benda is going for. According to the article, the Dark Flag is aimed at a more up-market segment than their ROX 707 model, so they're not trying to compete on price alone. They're trying to compete on features, on technology, on the overall experience. And you know what? That's exactly what smaller manufacturers need to do to break into established markets. Now, I want to give you my honest opinion here, and I want to be really clear about something. I'm not saying you should go out and buy a Benda Dark Flag 600 tomorrow. I haven't ridden one, I haven't even seen one in person, and neither have most of the people who are going to watch this video. But what I am saying is that we should be paying attention, because the motorcycle industry has a long history of established players getting comfortable, resting on their reputations, incrementally updating the same platforms year after year while charging more money. And when that happens, it creates an opening for someone else to come in and offer something different, something unexpected, something that makes people say, wait, why aren't the big companies doing this? That's exactly what's happening right now. Benda is out there building V4 cruisers with auto-clutch systems and air suspension and dual TFT displays. And whether those bikes end up being reliable long-term or not, the fact that they exist at all is a wake-up call. Because, let me ask you something else. If a Chinese company can develop a 598cc V4 engine from scratch, build an auto-clutch system that works like Honda's premium technology, offer air suspension as an option, and bring it all to market at a competitive price point, what exactly are the big manufacturers spending their engineering budgets on? I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anyone. There are plenty of amazing motorcycles coming out of Japan, Europe, and America right now. But you have to admit that the pace of real innovation has slowed down in certain segments. Cruisers especially have been stuck in a V-twin rut for decades. And I get it. V-twins sell. V-twins have character. V-twins are what people expect when they think of a cruiser. But expectation and innovation don't always go hand in hand. Sometimes the best ideas come from someone who isn't burdened by 50 years of "this is how we've always done it." Here's where I land on all of this. According to the reports in the type approval documents, the Dark Flag 600 makes a claimed 70 horsepower and weighs about 529 pounds. Those are solid numbers for a middleweight cruiser. Not class-leading, but solid. And when you add in the technology package, the auto clutch, the air suspension, the dual displays, the overall package starts to look really compelling for a certain type of rider, specifically someone who wants something different, someone who's curious about new technology, someone who's not afraid to buy a motorcycle from a brand that doesn't have decades of dealer network support in their country yet. But here's the reality check.